Have we fragged this, Commander?
Easily used, huh?
If it weren't for these damn girl implants, he'd be a smoking crater by now.
Sorry, Jack.
Go, go, go!
What's up, esports fans? This is Z1 with another cast between Adelscott and HuK, and in this particular episode I'll be taking you through the 7 games that these two players just played in the Gosugamers finals. I'll be bringing you some highlights from the games, showing you what went on and the definitive points in the games that actually ultimately determine the outcome. Now in this first matchup on Lost Temple, we've got Adelscott throwing up an early expo at about the 5-minute mark, and he's going to get the underway. HuK on the other side of the map does not opt for anything at his natural and instead is getting started on this robo facility, which he soon decides against, and instead is going to be throwing up a 5 warp gate strat. You're going to see him do that right now. There's the first, there's the second, and there's the third on top of the 2 already he has. So that's going to be HuK's approach in this particular game. Adelscott setting himself up by his natural in a very defensive position over here. He's going to be throwing down his first photon cannon, and at this stage we want to see HuK make some kind of pressure, because HuK has got this early game strategy, and it looks like Adelscott's setting himself up for the mid game. What HuK does just up the way is summon up a pylon there by the Zolnugger Tower, start spawning in a sentry heavy army. Let's see him move in here and see what he can do. As you can see, that pylon halfway done, and Adelscott just needs to last out until that pylon goes up, and that's really going to help him out. That pylon coming up in the nick of time, and it really does a lot of damage to HuK, and he's forced to retreat, and we're going to see a lot of this back and forth going on at this stage of the game. Some constant aggression from HuK is required here at the 10-minute mark, so he makes a move in, throws down a lot of force fields that seem to lock down those stalkers, but can he overcome Adelscott here at his natural? Adelscott has just got those photon cannons up on the cliff, so that's helping him out. HuK tries to huddle in the corner, but he's taking a beating here as Adelscott just warps in more units, and it looks like HuK is completely overwhelmed here, and Adelscott's going to have a significant advantage in the game, as HuK does not have his expansion yet. HuK is forced to retreat back into his natural, and he's going to be throwing up an expo. And at this stage of the game, Adelscott obviously wants to put up a lot of pressure, so we got him moving up from the center of the map to come use up momentum he's just gathered. Despite this expansion going up for HuK, he does not have enough to thwart the forces of Adelscott, who's now camping outside his base with a lot of stalkers and a lot of zealots. You can see him warping in a pylon over there, obviously to reinforce himself as he moves up, warping into more zealots for a bit of meat shield. Let's see what he can do over here. Adelscott moves in for the killing blow. A lot of force fields go down from HuK, but it's not enough to keep Adelscott at bay. All those stalkers are just coming in there, and he's got some sight up on the hill, and he's being able to take that out as well, so that's really working out for him. There's the GG from HuK right there. The second game of Metalopolis gets underway when Adelscott in the orange Protoss decides to make a push into HuK's base here with just 4 zealots, and to overwhelm HuK's 3 zealots. So HuK is letting his zealots get a little low there, and you can see some crazy micro going on from Adelscott. Adelscott camps outside HuK's base here, and he sets himself pretty. He wants to make sure that HuK does not expand when he's planning to expand himself, and he's got that expansion well underway, but he obviously wants to prevent HuK from doing the same on his side of the map. HuK, of course aware of this, wants to move out and take on Adelscott's forces. Looks like he's got the unit composition to do it, and he's focused firing down 1 stalker, and if that's all that's going to happen, and now he's got some room to breathe and he can throw down that expo. HuK now with a Colossi, as well as his expansion going up, he's going to be making a push and putting the pressure back onto Adelscott, because Adelscott's been a little passive as his expansion goes up, but this Colossi just winning the fight for HuK thus far, and this fight goes backwards and forwards for quite a while as these two players duke it out. Adelscott then tries to pull off a sneaker harass with a few stalkers here, and he gets shut down by Colossi and a couple stalkers on the way. Looks like he's trying to make a run for it, but there are some sentries in the way, and can they block off these? Yes, they block off those stalkers very effectively, and HuK manages to take out all 4 of Adelscott's stalkers very effectively with just 3 force fields. Adelscott shortly after tries to make a push onto HuK's forces here, but there's Colossi too much for him and he's got to back off. Some strong pressure from HuK as he comes in with a thermal lance on his Colossi, and Adelscott good to sandwich HuK into a corner here. He's got no other option but to out micro him. He's got a good spread of units around HuK's forces here. HuK knows that, and he's in a bit of trouble here now because he has not got the positional advantage over Adelscott, and Adelscott is just focus firing down those Colossi. It looks like he's going to win this particular fight and walk all over HuK. Adelscott maintains the pressure into this game and tries to make a move on a HuK space with all these stalkers coming into the fight. He's going to be focus firing down everything you can see. Looks like another Colossi has just come out for HuK now, so he's going to be moving that into play. But I don't know if it's going to be enough to save him. It is getting focus fired down. Does have that thermal lance reach, which is so great. But I think Adelscott's going to win this game. Just probes falling left, right, center from these stalkers, and those zealots tearing them up. But it looks like Adelscott has got this game as he completely overwhelms HuK's forces. HuK desperately trying to spawn in more stalkers to try and win this one, but Adelscott does have 4 stalkers in the main of HuK, and now he's firing away at those assimilators, probably soon the probes. It looks like he'll just be moving in with more and more stalkers, more and more zealots. He does have a pylon just up the way, bringing in a few forces. The third game takes place on Scrap Station, and we've got Adelscott setting himself up for a 4-gate and moving into this game. We are going to see the 4th gateway now. He's got this underway, and on the other side of the map we've got HuK preparing himself with a 2-gate robo by the looks of things, so you're probably going to see a robotics bay a little later on and probably an early Colossi. As we move on this map, we've got Adelscott moving across that Zelnaga tower in the center of Scrap Station and putting up a pylon to summon in more units from this 4-gate tech that he's got. Here we've got Adelscott making his way slowly but surely closer and closer to HuK's space with a bunch of pylons, and it looks like he's got a stalker heavy army, a couple zealots there for a meat shield. He's going to be summoning pylons as he goes along and just being warping in more units as he comes. From this point you can already say that this game is pretty much decided. HuK does have that robotics bay up and does have a Colossi on the way, but it's not going to help him out too much against this 4-gate that Adelscott's got working at the moment. Of course he can just keep on sending more and more units in. HuK's forces are already taking heavy damage, and it looks like he's got no more meat shield. Forced to pull out the probes, but it's not going to help him at all. And here we've got Adelscott just focus firing down some more stalkers as he goes along, and that Colossi not going to do as much good as HuK would have liked. And this 4-gate completely countering HuK's early build here. With this 4th game underway, we've got Adelscott making some early pressure once again with these zealots and stalkers, as we saw in the other games. Everything is on the line for HuK because he loses one more game and he will lose these finals. Adelscott, on the other hand, is sitting pretty, and he wants to get this over and done with soon. Gets himself into a bit of a bad position there and gets shut down by a few probes early on, so this early harass not ideal for Adelscott right now. He's not doing as much damage as he would have liked. About halfway through the game, HuK places down a very tactical pylon that's going to help him out a little bit later. This is just outside Adelscott's base, of course, and he can warp in units just over that, within that range, so very handy pylon placement that. Given HuK's somewhat passive play, Adelscott moves in to block off HuK's natural expansion once again. He's got a couple stalkers camped outside here, and he's hoping to just keep HuK locked down inside his base and not expand. HuK is going to move out though with just a few sentries. Being forced to pull back though, he knows that he's outnumbered, and here we've got Adelscott really asserting his dominance over HuK. But back in HuK space, you see that we do have a robotics facility up, as well as a robotics bay about to go up, so we're going to definitely see a few Colossi coming out in a second. Just moments later, we've got HuK moving out of his base against Adelscott over here. Adelscott placing those zealots nicely, but it's not enough against these Colossi, which HuK is going to micro out of the way of those focus fire of the stalkers. Looks like he's been doing a counter-attack of some other kind against Adelscott. Adelscott moving across the map with just stalkers now. He's going to have to warp in more units as this pylon is placed in the center of the map, but it's not going to be enough. And here we've got HuK spawning in 2 zealots and a sentry behind Adelscott using that pylon, and look at this effective sentry use that HuK has got going on. He places a force field down there, continues the push from the front, and locks adelscott down. And just as that goes on, adelscott is warping in more units, but it's a no match for this Colossi that is just tearing up through units. And looks like HuK is just bringing in more units via that pylon on the side, some zealots just to do some hard tanking. And some good Colossus micro over there wins this game for HuK right there. Things got off to a very slow start in the 5th game between HuK and adelscott. HuK just camping out here with a sentry heavy army, and it's only when adelscott started making a move for HuK's destructible rocks at the back of his base did things heat up, and HuK obviously moves in to defend those. Adelscott does manage to take out these destructible rocks, but he's not going to make an approach through there given that it's well guarded on the other side. Instead, he's going to send some zealots and stalkers around the other side and summon up a pylon to bring in a few more units a little later. Adelscott moves in with these 2 stalkers, 2 zealots around the back of HuK's base, but at the same time he pushes around the front with stalkers and zealots, but it gets shut down by quite a few sentries HuK's put in place, and this attack of adelscott's not quite as effective as he would have liked. Adelscott is then forced to retreat, and HuK's regained some position on adelscott here. Looks like he'll be moving out, but this could be the end of adelscott. This full gate of his has not worked out for him, and he's now being shut down by quite a few sentries. Great force field placement by there. Wins the game for HuK in this 5th game. This is the most lengthy game between these 2 players in this particular matchup. It took place on Delta Quadrant. Things got off to a slow start until the 9.5 minute mark, when we've got HuK busy making an approach on adelscott's main over here from the front. But meanwhile, in the background, he's got a pylon slowly summoning in the back. He's probably going to be warping in units over across the little gap into space there and harassing the natural expansion of adelscott. HuK, of course, does not have any kind of expansion, so he's looking to really put a dampener on things as far as this natural is concerned. This constant harass of HuK's eventually means the end of adelscott's expansion around the 12 minute mark, so HuK really managing to shut down this natural of adelscott. It's just too many colossi for adelscott to deal with, and HuK overwhelms adelscott's army over here and keeps this momentum and just keeps pushing onto adelscott's base. HuK moves in on adelscott's natural a little later on with 3 colossi to try to do a bit of damage to these probes, and he takes out quite a few before he's forced to retreat, before he gets headed off on the other side. The game heats up moments later when adelscott encounters HuK's forces in the middle of the arena here. Looks like he's going to be using his colossi and their thermal lance once again to take out the stalkers and colossi of HuK. He sent 2 stalkers around the other side, and he's going to be focus firing a few of the Canadian stalkers down. After winning that previous fight, we've got adelscott trying to make use of some of the momentum he's managed to gather and put some pressure onto HuK here. Looks like he'll be moving into HuK's expo here, but HuK, it does manage to draw those probes off just in the nick of time. And what adelscott's going to do is initiate a fight between the 2 forces here. Looks like a stalker and colossi heavy army coming from both players here. A few more sentries for adelscott, but it looks like HuK has got the numbers as far as colossi are concerned, and that might make all the difference here as they just chew up all the forces that adelscott's got left, and it looks like HuK slowly pulling himself in the lead, and that's going to be the GG right there. The 7th and final game between HuK and adelscott takes place on Kulas Ravine, and very, very passive defensive game this one, and barely any action until this point in the game, where adelscott decides to take out his own destructibles and probably put up an expansion soon, or so was his plan. Moments later, we've got HuK moving in with his sentries in the front and stalkers in the back. He throws down a lot of force fields and locks down all the stalkers of adelscott, catches him out of position. Adelscott loses a lot of stalkers in a matter of seconds, and it's not looking pretty for him as his zealots are all trapped in the back. They're not meat shielding against the sentry and stalker heavy army of HuK over here. HuK just completely overwhelming adelscott and winning this particular fight, and in a very impressive fashion very early on he ends this best of 7 series 4-3.